Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Maximize Excellence. I am your host. My name is Lori Harris, and I am partner at Harris Whitesell Consulting. And today I'm very, very excited to have with us as our guest speaker. And we're going to hold a dialogue today around maximizing sales strategy and what that means, and particularly open up the dialogue about AI and sales, the sales process, and what does a fractional sales expert and executive mean for you. So we'll dive into that. But before we do, I want to definitely give you some background about our guest today. Michael Donlon is a seasoned healthcare sales leadership executive with over 25 years experience leading growth strategies within corporate and startup environments. And currently, he functions as a fractional chief revenue officer within the SalesXceleration platform, concentrating on working with small and mid-sized companies to develop and optimize their sales strategy, their processes, and execution. He focuses not only on the strategic level, but takes a hands-on approach at the tactical level to ensure optimal benefits and outcome metrics for all his clients. And prior to consulting work, he held the role of sales leader with Amazon Care, responsible for standing up the Southeast region's Amazon foray into digital healthcare. And many of us are involved with that right now. So interesting. He's also held the positions with Accenture as managing director within the health and public services practice, and McKesson with the provider automation business unit. Michael also has significant experience working with early stage healthcare startup companies, having successfully managed 2 startups to successful double-digit multiple exits through acquisition by several public corporations. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Michael Donlon, partner of GrowthBridge Advisors and advisor at SalesXceleration. So welcome, Michael.
Yeah, Lori, thank you. Thank you for having me. That was a great intro. I feel like, it's Morgan Freeman introducing me, in the movie.
That's fun.
I need to hire you to do that more often.
Yeah, some say I've always had a radio voice.
Yeah. No, yeah, and the TV look. You got both.
No, that's too fun, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm very, very excited today. So this podcast really does justice in working with a lot of our network and a lot of our friends in the business world and a lot of CEOs and executives who are maximizing excellence in their area of subject matter expertise. And so we like to tap in and tune in to some of the hot topics and some of the things that are going on currently. And right now, sales is a hot button, definitely, for anyone and everyone out there in business. And there's a lot of dynamics that are impacting that. And I definitely want to cover the top 3 areas that are really seem to be important right now. And then there's also some other, hopefully we'll get into some of these other discussion points we have. But before we begin, Michael, do you want to share with our audience anything else?
No, that's great, Lori. And thanks for having me. It's a real treat. I've been following you guys for a while. I love your content. It's very relevant and it's very insightful. And to have me included in that is a compliment, a real treat. So looking forward to this conversation and, sharing my background experience, what I'm hearing in sales and, moving organizations, to sales excellence, I think it's a great process. And once you get there and you can really drive 20-30% growth for a company in the first year, you make a lot of friends pretty quick, right? So it's great.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. So true. So let's dive right in. Let's get into the biggest hot topic, and that's how do we leverage AI in this sales process, and dive into some of the things around buyers how they use it, and how are they much more informed and are data driven. Also, the evolution of the sales process and methodology around AI, and how AI has gone from data to ML, and I'm going to let you define these, LLM, and knowing what they are really important. Right. So make sure you touch all those three subcategories too in AI.
Yeah, and if I don't, remind me, but I'm happy to. But I get more questions about that than anything, Lori, and people are really wanting to understand it. They know it's coming, and it is coming. It's people are already using it, whether they know it or not. Alexa's AI, Grammarly, a lot of people use that's AI, and certainly everyone knows Chat GTP. But as you start to look at the evolution of AI, it's getting more and more specific use cases.
Right.
And Mark Benioff said that AI is the data workforce for the new age. So what do you mean by that is, like in sales leadership for your group, he's talking about there's the typical workforce, which is your sales team. Right. But he starts talking about this data workforce. So what's that? And it's really, as a sales leader, you need to start managing this AI enabled, bots that are handling, their all kinds of things. It's really driving automation in the sales workflow, but it's personalizing messaging and solution alignment. And predictive analytics is really illuminating where sales teams should be focused, who's their ideal customer profile. So, and AI is never going to replace that human element, because that's important, right? People buy from people, right? They buy from people they trust, that they like, and that they have a solution. Right. And folks still like that relationship. Right. But there's a lot of manual, repetitive administrative tasks in the sales process. So, automated data entry, right? Appointment scheduling, follow-up emails, that kind of thing. That's what AI is really starting to leverage. And there's a lot of companies out there that are already doing this. So I'll give you an example. So I had a meeting with the president of a SMB bank, right? So and I use this AI called KnowledgeNet that I really like, that I got it because it integrates my CRM with my LinkedIn and everything. But there's so much more capability in it. So I said, all right, let's just test this. So in that, I said, so you have to tell it who it is, right? You're a sales leader. You help me get ready for this meeting with this president. Put in his name and said, tell me what the key business drivers, trends are in this industry and how I can align to it. It came back, Lori, with the whole list of here's the key, drivers and trends that small, medium-sized banks are dealing with, right? And here's the things you should talk about. And it went a step further. It even gave me a psychological profile on this individual, scraping all the data that's out there, right? And said, here's how you should handle this call, right? And I had 30 minutes, so it said, get to the point. Here's to talk about. Boom, 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 right? And I was just so blown away by that. And, some of it, what you're like, that doesn't sound right. But to have that level of detail going into a call. And so that's what AI is driving, right? But what it's also driving in the market, what I've seen, is higher expectations from your target markets, that you need to know more about me. You need to get to the point on understanding my business, my market, what are the key trends that are impacting it, and really how your offerings align to that. How are you a solution? And so I've really seen that people expect more, in these initial early conversations. So sales teams have to be really, really prepared for that.
And what's wonderful about this, I mean, I'm going to date myself here, but going back into the 80s and working on, just database relational databases, et cetera.
Yeah, right.
And really thinking about, predictive analytics and how they've evolved and optimized predictive analytics so that we can get to this state of automation.
Right.
And over the years, the state of automating just payment processing and some of the other things that we used to do, think about it. Yeah, my mother used to get in the car, once a month, and on that whole day, she drove around paying the utilities in person, paying, the butcher, paying, going around and making these payments or mailing them, putting them through the mail. Remember that? Writing a check putting it through the mail. And that still exists to this day. People still haven't let go of that either.
Yeah, that's right.
And for me, I will say this, what I love about AI is that we're normalizing what we've really been doing for quite some time. And it's really put some sense of urgency around this. The last thing I will say is, because of what Lynn and I do and the company that we run, we definitely talent are the number one asset of any organization. And, it's almost secondary is your tech stack in how you, how you optimize this tech and how the people within the organization are really genuinely interacting with one another and tactically optimizing this tech. And so the component, the humanity component, truly comes in as a validator. It comes in as a leverage, because if we can absolutely pull data, validate that data, and optimize that data in the process of interaction and the behavior component, the cultural components, and creating the norm, and then going through and co-creating.
Yeah.
Pretty darn powerful. And we're always selling. It doesn't matter if it's internally or externally. And I know a lot of 100%. What you do. Yeah. And a lot of,
right.
Yeah. And a lot of yours, you and I have had some conversations, and you've got to have that ability to truly negotiate and leverage and communicate well internally, as well as be able to do that with new prospects, even in the attraction process of how you attract people to your brand and sell that part of it as well. So AI is playing a big role all the way. It's very wholesome. It is data. And as I was taught back in the 80s, we always validate our data. We always check for clarity and we check for accuracy. Nothing's perfect. I was reminded of that many times by a lot of the nuclear engineers I used to hang around. They used to tell me all the time, Lori, there's no such thing as perfection. Remember that. However, we can be accurate to a very minute degree. We can be very accurate. So understand that and always work to be effective. And so in leveraging AI, what would you say is the component of effectiveness for leveraging AI in the sales process?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to your previous comments around data-driven decisions, always insightful if you're using the right data, right?
Yes.
And the difference now is there's so many more data resources and inputs, right? So 20 years ago, there wasn't that much, right? You couldn't really find out about someone. Now it's multi-channel. Right. They're doing scrapes on LinkedIn, Instagram, everything. And all that data is coming into a central, sort of repository, and call it an LLM. Right. And the AI is getting so good now that it's distilling massive amounts of data, right? And pulling in what is relevant. And so the trick, everybody asks me, like, what's the trick to AI? The key skill is going to be the querying process. How do you just create a question to it, right? And I took a whole training class on, all it was is, how do you train your AI, right? How do you ask specific questions? And so I think that's really a big change, that you have so much data that you could draw from, that the AI can draw from, that you're really getting a lot of insight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with AI that's different from, say, machine learning, that it's trained to think and to use reason to come up with the best possible response, right? Machine learning is that you're taking a machine, and by repetition you're making it more accurate and more effective. But there's limits to that, right? AI is neural networks. It's expanded. It's designed to think like a human, and query your whole brain to come up with a response, right? That's what an LLM does.
I love it.
That's why it's different. Yeah.
So in the sales world, how are we ensuring ethics in use of, and not just use, in leveraging AI? So where is that conversation at right now in regards to the ethics of use of AI?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? And I think I read a statistic, about 43% of companies are already using AI.
Right.
It's already coming, right? Yeah. And so I think as you start to develop these chatbots and automate that initial outbound, workflow, you're taking a human out of that process that is reviewing to say, I'm trying to set meetings, that's automated. Is what I'm saying accurate? And can we actually really do this? Right. And so I think it's really, really important to not just let, AI is a tool, right? Just like a CRM or anything else, it should be looked as that, but humans manage that process. And frankly, they're responsible for it. They're responsible for that messaging, regardless if it's automated or not. It's your name and your reputation. So you've got to be always looking at it and saying, is this accurate? Is this right? Even from a marketing standpoint, is this the messaging we want? Because as good as AI is, there's still a lot of hallucinations, and there's a lot of stuff in there that you're like, where did this come from? Right?
Gotta check it. Absolutely.
And that's, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. And that's,
with some of these companies like Persona AI and these others that automate that whole, they call it 24/7 customer support. That's great, right? You get immediate response, you're booking meetings, outbound messaging, whether it's email, chat, LinkedIn. You've got to make sure that there's guardrails around that. And that you're really saying what you want it to say. Right. And that's really important in the inputs and how you do that.
And it's just like any big project. It takes time. It takes time for the forming, the norming, the storming, because there's going to be some storms, and then the actual production. And even in production, we still got to go in and still do those process checks.
That's right.
So that continuous, one of my dear friends, I'm trying to think of the name of his recent book, but he's just a guru at project management, and he's out there on LinkedIn, wonderful guy. One of the things he was saying is, the old ado of project management was that it belonged in large corporations, and it was for these multi-billion-dollar projects. And that's not necessarily true, because projects definitely have a start date and an end date. And a lot of these things that we do that are automated have a start and an end to them. So that whole process of what we were trained and taught in project management somewhat applies here in the use of and leveraging of AI, in that
That's
we
right.
just need to keep those process checks in place, always seeking for clarity, always, the goal is always effectiveness. I know that when
Insight.
Lynn and
Yeah.
I train with leadership development, we are always looking, for that goal of effectiveness in behavior, and that
Right.
goal of effectiveness and blending behavior with the tactical, with your teammates. And
Yeah,
so
that's
that
right.
your culture's constructive and it's achievable, right?
Yeah, right.
So
You've got to make sure that the AI is supporting your messaging, your ethics,
yes,
your
yes,
company name. Because here's what's happening is these systems are creating a lot of data that then they're pushing towards the sales team, right? Sales team's reading this, reacting to it, right? And hopefully they're like, yeah, that's not right, I'm going to change that. But sometimes they just
hit the
make it
button.
lazy and just say, hit the button, yeah, I'm just going to say that, and it's not right.
That's true.
So that's always there. You're going to always have to have that human
And customers know it. They absolutely are catching.
100% now.
They're so used to social media now that they're catching the little phrases. They're catching even the tone in your brand colors.
Yep.
They're catching when you've changed the coloring or the font. They're catching these things, and they're the first ones to express, hey, what's going on? Or hey, I noticed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's akin to like junk mail, right? Back in the day, you're sending me this, and it's just this uniform BS. Like, I know this is AI, right? And it's going to get more pervasive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the things I've seen, like there's a company called SendSpark, where you can basically, I don't know if you've heard of it, but you can create a video of yourself, and it just gives you a script, but it'll just take your video and it'll create a video message out to your customers, and it will create a narrative, you talking about whatever the key challenges or the business drivers are of that specific market. It's automating that whole process, right? Or like beautiful AI can create a whole PowerPoint for you, right? But you're the one who's got to really look at that, because it's going to be somewhat generic, right? And I talked about earlier that it's raising the expectations of your market. You hit that exactly right? I can tell right away if someone just sent me an AI generated email, like it's too good, right? And so it's that kind of expectation, like, yeah, no, I'm not responding to that. But if there's things in there that's really personal and really sort of these human elements to it, that's what you use AI for. Take components of it, but weave it into something that that's got some warmth, just some personalization to it.
So what are you finding are some of the best resources for research when you're customizing presentations and messaging as well? Because those emails still matter. The text messaging matters.
They do.
Right?
100%.
All this matters. So what are some of the best resources for research and for preparing and
like vendors and those
or even best practices, right?
Yeah, best practices for lead gen and outreach. I like Persona AI. There's another one called Smart Lead AI, and there's a low cost one called Instantly AI. That folks, if they really want to kind of dip their toe in the AI water, they can do it. And then there's more sophisticated ones, like it's called RB2B, not RD2D. D2, but RB2B, where this company can actually capture who comes to your website and reverse engineer back to say who that person is.
Isn't that amazing?
You think you're anonymous coming on my website.
Oh,
right? I could use this application to go back and it'll find you, and it says, here's Lori Harris, here's her old LinkedIn, right?
Yes. And
is that pervasive? I don't know. Or is that effective? sales?
We know that the internet is open. It's an open source. We know that. And if we don't say it out loud, we still know it. And the moment we sign up for any one of these platforms, every keystroke we make is recorded and documented, and it's held for decades.
ChatGPT has everything you've ever put in there. It's into its model. And so I was using AI in a previous company that it was using it to automate the longitudinal care plan for patients. Right? And I took it to a big healthcare company, and they're like, "This is great. But what's your LLM?" And we said, "Oh, it's open source." And they're like, "We're not using it." And I'm like, "Why not?" And they said, "Because it's open. And not only is it open, all that data, they thought it was a HIPAA violation."
Right.
And they were concerned that someone could reverse engineer through that back into their system. So you're going to see a rise in what they call closed LLMs that are closed off. And a lot of this is for healthcare. Like they have a set of data, it's closed. That's it. Right. I'm oversimplifying, but here's your data. You can draw from that.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not going to be expanding. The problem is with AI, every day it's just getting bigger and bigger, and then more add on to it. So by the time you have this closed LLM and regulated by the government says, yeah, you can use this, it's already obsolete.
Yeah. So these best practices around this, though, so for me as a sales executive, me as a sales rep, me as a sales manager, sales director, the ability to do this and do it well does require what? Does it, training and practice and I would imagine a little bit of change management as well, because these tools are evolving very rapidly because of AI's ability to pull in and source the relevancy of data at, exponentially. There's just exponential data. And so as it formulates this data to be utilized by us through a query, ensuring that we're using some of the better tools so that our messages are clear, our presentations are on point and influence and effective, right? That goal of effectiveness again. So is there anything else in that kind of bucket when it comes to AI and customization that really matters right now?
I think it goes back to what I said about this data workforce, Lori, where like a senior sales exec, they're responsible for their sales team. Right? They're responsible for the performance, for the quality, for the training, for everything they're doing. They have to be responsible now for that, that data, that chat workforce in the same manner. They've got to have the oversight. Right? They're always looking to say, is this on message? Is this what we want to portray to the market? Is this doing what we think it's doing?
Yeah.
There's a security risk, right? And the sales process, it's getting more complicated, right? And it's moving faster. You got to have these tools to keep up, right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of the mindset that I talk to a lot of clients is you've got to manage this. Don't just set it and forget it. Because you've always got to be constantly being alert.
It makes me think of in the older days with journalism, there was always a fact checker, team, and the fact checkers really dove in and made sure that it was accurate and effective. And so, are we going to find that to be true now with sales teams? That there's going to be maybe that opportunity where if a sales rep is working their pipeline, would it in fact be more efficient to have a sidebar team who does all that kind of, I'm going to call it fact checking, right? Or validation, so that the salesperson can just pick it up and move with the intention, move with the news stories to be able to connect with their prospects and their clients.
Yeah.
More quicker, faster, right? More effectively.
Yeah. That's already happening, believe it or not.
It is.
Oh, yeah. So
what about small business though? What about for people like you and I that don't have a large sales team, or, what about those small businesses?
Well, it's driving efficiency. So it's an efficiency tool. That's where you have to look at it, right? Like a CRM or any of these other things.
Yeah.
Right. You use it to do the market research, the initial, set up a automated lead and scoring metric where the system is doing outbound lead gen. And then you set up a process where it really scores it to say, is this our ideal customer profile or not? Because you're gonna spend a lot of time cycling through that. You can really train these systems to do a lot of that for you. So as your limited sales team, the leads and the meetings they're setting up, they're high value.
Oh, right? And your stress level goes whoop.
Yeah, that's right. But you talk about monitoring. I think that's what you're talking about. So there's dictation software now, like Firefly is one that I use. Fathom is another one where I have it on. Like I would have it on this call right now. I'm talking to a client. It's just a participant listening in. It's capturing everything I'm saying, right? And then it can consolidate at the end of the call. It's going to consolidate down to the key points, right? It's gonna identify based on your language and your tone if you're receiving this positively or negatively. That's right. That's the level of detail this is getting to.
Powerful. And there's the facial recognition now as well. That's monitoring muscle movements, right? That's cheeks. Right. Up here.
And it's telling you if you said something that's not accurate. Like you said, the system does this, but it really does this, right? So you can have that built in, that autocorrect function. Mm-hmm. So, that's, and so you could say, okay, then you could have a manager or someone listening to that playback and saying, okay, this, here's how we can improve. This was great. This was good. They reacted well to this, but not so good here. We were a little inaccurate on this functionality. It's that level of, constantly monitoring and getting better and making sure that you're accurate. And you've got to, it's an arms race. I keep saying you've got to have those tools.
But I like the ability to, I call it just monitoring the temperature of your client and that process that you're in and that workflow that you're moving through, and really truly, again, I'm gonna say this till the cows come home, right, and the pigs fly. It is about effectiveness and how effective are we, and always in current present state, and reflecting on what we did, but always coming back to this current present state. Where are we? What's the temperature? Where are we going? What's the goal? And how do we make this effective? Yeah. So constantly
it's supporting where we're going, right? Yeah. Technology is just technology, right?
Right.
Most of the time we don't care how it functions, but is it giving us the result?
Okay. So that makes me, I've got some cheats, you guys. I'm not lying. I've got some cheats here that I'm taking notes on too, but but this really triggered me. So we know that there's a lot of social media platforms. Everybody knows there's lots. There are some key ones that are more utilized, that have more participants than others. I'll just leave it at that. The quality of posts out there in the world aren't necessarily truth, and we know that there's a lot of false information. So what role does social media have? And in my notes here that you and I have for this call and this podcast today, we talked a little bit about, salespeople are working the process. They're doing the hard work. They are using AI wisely. and
Or
and
should be.
truly,
We hope
yeah.
they are.
But there's a lot that's out of our control. We can't force people to pick up the phone when we're calling, because we're really excited about talking to them, because we've done the homework. We see the connection, we see the alignment, we feel it. We've got notes on it, and we've aligned where they're at. We've aligned their culture. We've aligned their strategies. We've looked at their investor documents, all of those good things, right? And we've learned more about the person because we've gone and looked at everything and pulled all that in and used AI for all the research and the data. So they don't pick up the phone. They don't respond to the text. They don't click through with the drip campaigns or the mail campaigns that we do. They tear up the direct mail, even though that's old school, traditional. They don't respond to any ads that are out there, whether they're digital or traditional. So social media's impact on this, and LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, some of the others. Talk about social media impact.
It's like I said, it's another data source that's getting fed into these models. Like my, I talked about the example earlier with the bank president, right?
Yeah.
The technology is so powerful. It's scraping everything with their name associated to it. Right?
Yeah.
Good and bad, right?
Right.
Be careful what you're posting on social media, right?
We wish we knew that was attended to.
I tell my kids all the time, whatever you put out there, it's out there for the world, all the time. But what it's doing is creating a higher noise level, right? And you talk about it should be easier to engage with a prospect because it's all these multi-channel resources to use, but we're all getting numb to it. Right. I was working with a very senior CEO of a very large health plan, multi-billion dollars worth of revenue. He just wanted to communicate with chat, right? On text, right? That's he wanted to communicate. So it's people expect that you reach them where they are, what their preferred, channel is. But with all this going on, it's this noise level is rising. That's where you can use AI to cut through that noise. And you can create this really highly customized message, whether it's email or LinkedIn or text, that's going to cut through that. Mm-hmm. Right? That's an effective use of how to do that. To say, hey, Lori, I know I saw that you really have a campaign to drive your podcast and drive participation in your podcast. I have these tools that can do boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to stop and go, man, that's pretty insightful, right? This guy must know what he's talking about. You're going to stop all this noise around you. You're going to focus on that.
Yeah.
That's what AI, can do for you effectively.
Yeah. Right? And I love the tools, the sales tools that are out there, because if you get some of the better ones, you're seeing it do the work for you. They'll bring in that buyer's intentions. They'll bring in those media and news stories that align, that are very relevant. And they'll also tell you if this person's more likely to use mobile phone, their headquarters phone, their email, their text. So you can see, and like you're saying, we're even getting now the data as to they visited our website, they were here on these days, and they looked at these things, and they spent this much time on all this.
And by the way, they're a surfer, and they like to boat, and they're a bird watcher. Right.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So
all of a sudden I'm a bird watcher. Right.
Everything we used to do manually that used to take weeks and sometimes months in research.
But that's
right?
The level of insight. So when you're putting stuff out there, be careful, because it's all being sucked up.
Yeah.
And all your hobbies, clubs, that's all available.
I like books, everybody. I read at least 52 books a year.
Yeah. I like surfing and boating, so
I know, right?
Yeah.
Water girl.
Yeah, let's have a meeting on my boat. We'll get a lot
I
more done.
know.
Right?
Photographer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
one more thing in this bucket is social media
sure.
influencers. Okay. I do want to mention influencers and sales. So how are we managing that these days? Because there's a lot of controversy and a lot of noise there. So help us out with understanding that.
Yeah, that's kind of a marketing function, but
Yeah.
it's just another channel, Laura,
Yes.
that these keep proliferating. There was LinkedIn, then there's Facebook. Now you have influencers, right? You've got to
Yes.
manage that and say, what are they saying? Is this the brand that are they representing us well? What's the messaging, right? And
Well,
really being very cognizant around that, because all that's out there and it's all
yeah.
going to get scraped into as you use AI to build the ideal customer profile and who should I be, calling at the bank. They're going to all that's going to be built into a profile that's going to be pushed out to, the sales team and to your clients, right? Reverse that. Clients are saying, all right, who is this Michael Donlon, right? Who's this GrowthBridge? Tell me about it, and all that's coming back. Whatever I put out there, it's capturing it, and it's making a judgment on who I am, what I do, how I do my business, right?
So again, sales leaders, sales teams, sales members, right? Executive, account managers, etc.
Yeah.
Doing all this, really doing a lot of training on AI tools and working really diligently with my team on, to align to the right clients. And I'm curious, when it comes down to how companies and leaders are truly establishing their sales teams so that there is a strong culture and there's unity and there's alignment and there's sustainability in all of this. So I'm sure compensation, planning, and a lot of these other things come into play. And are you seeing some dynamic changes within the structure of sales teams and sales departments? And then from the policy side, the financial side, are you starting to see dynamics there as well?
Yeah, on the comp side, I think it's organic, right? And it's you're still paying for performance, right? That's the key. And how are you getting results, right? So effective salespeople now have to have that skill set. They've got to be able to leverage technology. Lori, even if it's just Chat GPT and learning how to pose questions and queries on, and when you're researching a potential client, expectations, they're rising because of this technology. And so, Jack Walsh said, change before you have to, right? but that's what sales teams, right? You've got to get smarter how you do your work. Sales leaders, they don't care how you do your work, other than it's ethical and appropriate. But if you're getting results, they don't care.
And so what about incentives? What about top performers, all that in the past became very internally competitive, sometimes to the point where abuse of power, things like that went on. How's that playing out? And again, is it the same, like you've been saying all along? It comes back to just being a good steward of who you are in this as a sales, leader, salesperson, and doing your homework. I mean, really going and doing your homework and doing a good job.
That has, in my experience, a good salesperson, what that profile is, what that skill set is, that hasn't changed. That's always going to be the case.
Good.
It's changing a little bit, right? With AI and how it's offloading a lot of the manual, repetitive administrative tasks that's involved that before a salesperson would have to do around lead gen, doing outreach. doing a demo, right? That's kind of getting offloaded, and now salespeople are expected to perform at the highest level of their skill set and their capability. So that has not changed at all.
Yeah.
So you've got to build trust. You've got to build that relationship. You've got to really understand what the challenge is that client's going through. Now you get a lot of insight, and when you're coming in, and you a good salesperson. There's two things that I think make a good salesperson, right? It's prep, right, and it's questioning. What kind of questions are you asking on the front end to really get to the root of the challenge? Because a lot of client people, salespeople assume that the client knows what their problem is. A lot of times they're not, right? They don't know. And so it's really taking that specific question to start peeling things back. And they think their issue is just the symptoms, right? They don't understand the root cause of that. And a good salesperson will start peeling back that onion to say, what's the effect? Where's that come from? What's the downstream impact? And keep peeling until they're like, get to the root of the issue. That's not going to change.
Yeah.
Right? They get more effective, but you have to put the work in.
So in the sales strategy, then what's changed and what's becoming more norm given some of these technology advancements and again, the higher expectation of behavioral performance, not just tactical performance.
Yeah.
Yes. So what's different about sales strategy now?
I think it's the same around, you're building your ideal candidate profile, you're tailoring your prospect messaging, you're building that scorecard, playbook, all that. Now, AI, again, is just a tool. If you're not picking up that tool and using it, it's not going to help you. Right. But the expectations are more and more that you're going to have greater insight into your client, into the market, into the current events that are impacting that. And you're going to educate yourself and be able to talk to those issues. Right.
So because data's moving exponentially. So how are sales leaders staying on top of all the evolving trends, the technology advancements, the infrastructure evolution that's going on right now? How are they managing that piece of it?
It's tough. I will tell you, it's like I said, it's an arms race, right? Your competition, are they quicker to adopt this type of technology? Right. And you're like, okay, where are we deficient? Why are they so much better? And so you've always got to be aware and looking at the new evolving technology. How's it being utilized? And that's why, like I keep saying, you've got to manage that data workforce. That's super important to understand what technology is coming out. How could it be leveraged? Right. And where could it work within your stack that you're going to give your sales teams a competitive advantage. So there's no easy answer to that. It's a lot of work, And
I'll just say this, Michael, I know it to be true across all functionalities in organizations and business. Every leader we speak with and work with, whether it's operations, whether it's sales, whether it's legal or law, whether it's finance, the advancement of technology in our time right now, in this unified generation, I'm just going to put all generational into one time bucket, right?
Right.
I do believe it is upon us to be better stewards of these tools and to really find ways to maximize and optimize them for the alignment to the mission, to those products and services. Company philosophy is very, very critical. And, for Lynn and I, we always are asking our leaders, what is your mission? What is your vision? And I'll be honest, Michael, I would say 50, maybe 40% of them don't know it.
Yeah.
They keep,
One strategy I've seen to be effective is to limit, you start to create your own LLM, right?
yes,
Right. So it's customized. So
yes,
what we do, we build a sales playbook for clients, and it
love it.
captures everything: sales strategy, sales infrastructure, sales management, all that. And this is a playbook that's could be 60, 70 pages, right? But we AI enable it. So this playbook is highly customized, right? And this is your source for your custom AI. So when a sales team queries, hey, what are the big market challenges in SMB banking, and how do we align? The AI will go to your playbook and pull that out, and then it'll pull out what has been, reviewed and accepted by the leadership team to say, this is how we align. This is our messaging around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll pull out, from open LLMs around, what are the challenges in this market. But then it's querying what you've already reviewed and said, yes, this is what we want to say. This is our messaging. This is our marketing. So to answer your question, one thing is to really control the data. What data sources are you using? How do you do that? How do you open up the aperture or close the aperture of data coming into your system?
Yeah, love it.
That's one way to do it.
And train well. Train your team well.
And train your data.
Yes,
train
right.
your AI. It's
on both tactical and behavioral, by the way. Please start
100%.
putting the behavioral component into because that's your big picture. That's your the wholesome approach that really does attest to a stronger culture and higher productivity levels. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't let manage the data. Don't let it manage you.
Yeah.
Right. Like anything, it's your company. At the end of the day, people buy from people. You want to build that relationship. You don't want this AI BS, mess with that. Have that human touch, right? Check in with your customers, even though they won't pick up the phone, call them in voicemail, right?
Right.
People kind of like that.
Yeah. So let's
you're
talk.
real.
Yeah, I know. Voicemails, there's still a message. Yeah. So let me ask you this, because we're talking about success, right? We're talking a lot about success, but I love how in your notes you wrote to me, you put training tool to negate the bad hire. So the bad hire. And really, there are incredibly effective ways to do this. And so talk about that, because with the development of the sales playbook, there is a component there when things just aren't aligned and they're not working well. You got to do something.
You got to do something, right? And as you start to change your whole process, your sales process, you've got to change the profile of your ideal sales person, whether it's on the sales team or a sales leader, because you're evolving, right? And you've got to have a sales leader that can evolve with that. So just like as you create an ideal customer profile, we create an ideal employee profile.
Yes.
What is that? What are those skill sets?
Yes.
What's that background? Being consciously competent, knowing why you're successful and make sure you're doing that. What are your best practices?
Love it.
Right. And then being able to align backgrounds, experiences, with that, with your team and your sales leader. But you've got to be comfortable with technology, and I work with trade, companies in the trade, plumbers, HVAC, and they're all starting to adopt technology. You've got it.
Mm-hmm. And there's such great tools for profiling, and we use a lot of them. We're certified and accredited in a lot of those, and absolutely, again, across all functionalities of the organization, you can profile these jobs, and you can profile the type of individual that's really needed. What I love about profiling as well is not only that, but you can profile if they're a good fit for your team.
That's right.
So it's really important. It's not the end all when it comes to.
Now, the one thing that's a little difficult, I will say, is you talked about it earlier, that cultural fit,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Amazon, very, very strong culture,
Right.
right? And you look at their hiring process, they've got multiple filters and screens, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will filter you, okay, can you do the job? Do you have that skill, right? Great. But then their biggest interviewing is a thing called a loop, and you
Uh-huh.
meet with 5 different people on one day, and they are focused on, are you a good fit for the culture of Amazon? You know, they
Uh-huh.
have 14 leadership principles, and they're asking you, situational questions or behavioral questions, around customer obsession is one of their big
Yes.
ones. Hey,
Yes.
talk to me, Lori, about a time when you demonstrated customer obsession when it wasn't in your favor to do so. What did you do? How did you do? How did it end up? And they make hiring decisions based on that, if you fit the culture. And that's one that I'm really struggling with, honestly, to say, how do you, because that's such a nuance. Like,
Yeah.
how do you use technology to get, if you're a cultural fit? I might just not like you, right?
Yeah. So come
I
spend
don't think
more
I can
time with
work for
Ian
me.
and I. And you're really,
Yeah.
and again, it's
So,
technology. So there's great
yeah.
science-backed technology that's been around for decades that does this. And
Yeah.
the thing about culture is it's not a standalone. There's culture, there's climate, and there's engagement, and they're very unique unto themselves, but they rely on one another. So
They do.
without going
Yep.
into grand detail, you've got to be able to inventory that. And it does take technology to do this, and it is AI based
Yeah.
technology. And we
That's
can
right.
look through the microscope to really identify the current state of culture, climate, and engagement. And we can really identify the gaps that are currently existing given the scope of employees and the behaviors within the organization that are
Yeah.
either constructive, passive defensive, or aggressive defensive. And
Yeah.
so within that, there are lots of levers, lots, I'm
Yeah.
telling you,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
truly drive good cultures and drive the attitude, which is the climate of those cultures, and the discretionary effort, which is the engagement, meaning that they're motivated and willing and ready and competent and capable. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of
That's right.
components that go into the human aspect of people's behavior, and any given factor on any given day can,
Change.
because it's
Different
like
color.
stars colliding
Yeah.
out there in the great universe that we live in. So,
Yeah.
and coexistent. So this is the
That's right.
dynamic, is that it's simply complex, and culture does matter. Alignment to core values. Core values are the behaviors that are expected and should be expected in the organization in order for there to be a good culture. Now,
That's right.
there's always this ideal culture, right? And we should be striving and working always effectively towards this ideal culture. And your leadership team should be defining that ideal culture. And right now,
Right.
the norm, more often than not, it's flipped. You got a lot of leaders who want this ideal culture, but yet your ideal culture is being driven by these siloed groups who have
Their own
influence.
cultures. Their own cultures within each silo, right?
So the beauty of inventory is you can look at it from the group level, or you can go and broaden it and look at the organization as a whole. You can bring
That's
it
right.
back down and break it out into even subgroups. And then you can even look at the individual level. So no different than what we're talking about with sales. That's
Yep.
why it's critical. And that's where the beauty of all these functionalities within the organization flow. They flow because there's one common denominator, and that's people.
That's right. and
And
you're not going to replace that, right? I
yeah,
mean, at the
and
end of the day,
data is something that truly informs us if we
that's
so
it,
choose, right?
right? Right. It's a data informed decision,
Yes.
but you're making the decision, right?
Yes.
You decide what's relevant, what's not. You get a lot more insights, right? A lot more data, but
Yeah.
you've got to make that decision. Now, ideally, theoretically, you should be making better decisions with better data, better insight, right?
So, so I want to ask you, one
Yeah.
of the trends that is, and you're living this, you're living proof of this, but the rise of the fractional talent for sales.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
talk about that, the Daniel percentage of fractional work and not core to the business, but it should be outsourced, things like that. So talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So interesting statistics, right? 45% of employers, they have significant challenge trying to find employees with the skills they need, right?
Right.
They're just not out there. And the other interesting rise that keeps doubling every year, I think it's about 40% of the US workforce is made up of individuals. You can call it fractional, this gig economy,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mhm.
And why? Because there's high value, right? For you think about a small, medium-sized company, right? To bring in a seasoned chief revenue officer, that the base salary be competitive is 230, 240,000, right? But a fractional CRO has 25 years, 20 years of experience, gets more done in a day than a less experienced, sales leader might do in a week. We have the
Uh-huh.
tools, the resources, but the know-how, and really to say, I mean, I'm bringing 25 years of expensive sales, sales training from corporations, right? And I really understand at that granular level how you can level up that capability
Yeah.
for small, medium-sized companies. They couldn't afford somebody full time, right? And more often than not, they hire the wrong person. Now
Right.
you're 6 to 9 months down the road, right? And you've got to get rid of them. Now you're a year down the road that you haven't grown sales. Sales are declining.
Yeah.
They plateaued, and so I call it consciously incompetent. You've got a problem, but you don't know how to fix it, right? Because it's not industry related per se, right? It's sales related. There's something wrong in your sales strategy, your sales infrastructure, your leadership, right? I come in totally unbiased view with that background experience and can really diagnose right away what the problem is and how to turn that around,
I love
right?
it.
For a fraction of the cost, right?
Right.
It's awesome value for
And no
companies that,
overhead.
yeah, a little overhead, right? And with the sales acceleration platform I use, there's just so many tools and resources and analytics. They couldn't get that on their own.
Right.
It's too cost prohibitive. And
Powerful.
so, the at the end of the day, it's the results, right? And with a fractional CRO, we show metrics and we're able to drive sales growth between 20 and 32% first year, right? I mean, that's talk about an ROI. Just bringing in that higher level of experience and resources and capability. But it's not just sales though, right? It's marketing, there's fractional growth in chief marketing officers. Certainly a lot of fractional CFOs are out there.
Right.
But CIOs, there's a huge pool of highly experienced talent out there that a small, medium-sized business should be looking at and really evaluating and say we could get this person for a third of the cost and less downside risk.
So where does sales processes and sales leadership, where does it go from here?
We just talked about it. It's you've gotta be thoughtful on how you're using technology, right? Because it's going to be getting more complex. It's going to move faster. Expectations in the market are just going to keep rising, right? So that's how you've got to keep up. keep up with it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, how do you feel? Because maybe I'm going to position something first, and then I'm going to ask the question.
Okay, great.
We understand the science around consciousness and cognition as it relates to behavior in the workplace. And in order for people to be effective, they have to take 100% responsibility for who they are, what they do, what they believe, what they think, what they say, what they do, etc. All of it, mentally, physically, the whole shebang. So that responsibility can only be encouraged in others, because when we try to hold people accountable, people resist. They become defiant, defensive, avoidance.
100%. Yeah.
So we get that passive defensive behavior that we're not needing or wanting in the organization. So encouraging responsibility is where I go. I'm going to be 100% responsible, and this is what we're going to have an impeccable agreement around, and this is what we're aligning to philosophically, the mission, vision, values, and strategically, this is what we're seeking to achieve. And by the way, here are the processes to do that, and we are going to develop you both tactically and behaviorally to ensure success over time. And this takes time. And we're going to do a better job in right fit hiring, right? We're going to do a better job in ensuring we've got the right people in the right seats at the right time for the right reasons. All that in theory is absolutely amazing. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And it
does,
it does happen sometimes. It's beautiful when it does. So when it comes down to being successful in sales and in the past, any sales team that I ever collaborated with or worked for, or even now as a small business owner in doing sales, accountability just burns me out. It really wears me down. So,
it's critical.
I've shifted this mentality of responsibility, and therefore it makes me be truly, I naturally find myself being more attuned to and excited about engaging in the process and engaging with my team members and my clients. I really do find there is a deeper level of commitment and a deeper level of engagement and interactivity that goes on.
Yeah.
I often find that we end up co-creating versus me individually achieving. So what I find interesting is and one of my dear friends who's a salesperson said to me, she goes, so how can the old structure of sales, meaning that I get these clients are assigned to me, or I'm chasing these clients and I get them first, so therefore I achieve. Is that still, are you seeing some dynamics there in how it's not just at us and it's more through us and co-creating this? How's that working out in sales?
Yeah. I always drive for this sense of empowerment.
Yeah.
Right? And I say, whether it's actual or perceived, Lori, a salesperson who feels empowered to make certain decisions, to have certain initiatives, those are the folks that are going to be most successful, right? Because they feel like they are in control of their destiny. So as I look at sales structure and processes and strategy, I'm not just talking to sales leader. I'm talking to the sales team. Say, first of all, why are you here? Like, why are you doing this job? Why do you like it? Why, and say, how could you do your job better? What tools are you missing? Right. And they love it because I'm this third party. And I said, by the way, all this is confidential. I'm not going to say anything that you said this. Man, the stuff you hear. But you start to hear that and you validate it And I'm telling you, it's a huge shift in attitude,
Yeah.
right? When somebody feels like they have a sense of control
Yeah.
in what they're doing, you know, that they are important. The ones
And
that don't have that, they're mailing it in, right?
yeah,
They're doing the bare minimum of what they
right.
have to do.
It's that climate. Yeah, you're really doing a
Mhm.
great, that temperature check, right? I love it.
The
Love
temperature
it.
check at all levels, right? And you know, again, they could go somewhere else. You know, there's so many tools now to do that. But if they
Mm,
are, you know, I have sales teams like, hey, we need, you know, if we had this tool to do this, yeah, I forget what it was. It was a AI enabled. I think it was it was the dictation. It was listening to sales calls.
uh-huh.
Like if we had that, that would save us so much time, right? And you know, and we implemented that, and they're like, you took my suggestion, this is phenomenal. I'm like, yep, I did, let's go. Now what are you going to do with it?
Be careful what you ask for. You may get
You get
it.
what you ask for, right? But you got to know, you know, it's the same. It's you've got to have that relationship with your employees, you know, and you've got to really understand what motivates them. That's not going to change.
I
It
love that
won't.
about you. You
Yeah,
are that way. You're always seeking to understand and also that synergy. I
that's
get
it.
that from you and I love that
Yeah,
about you. Michael,
yeah.
share with people who you are, your company, and give them a little bit of insight on how they can connect with you and what for.
Yeah, no, thanks, Larry. So, I have a consulting practice, you know, GrowthBridge Advisors, and it's pretty simple. I build a path to record-breaking sales revenue for small, medium-sized businesses, leveraging, you know, my 28 years of sales leadership experience, looking at things like sales strategy, sales infrastructure, sales management, developing a team, and you know, we have a whole process and a methodology that's proven. It's proven to drive sales, and that's that's the simple, you know, the fact of it. And I'm on LinkedIn. You can get through that. I do have, there's a website on my LinkedIn profile you can click on. What I will say in I have a sales readiness assessment that's 10 questions, takes about 5 minutes. And it really, when a visitor takes that, it is scoring them against almost 6,000 other companies before and after they started working with the sales acceleration process. But it gives, if nothing else, it gives them awareness to where their gaps and their awareness might be in their sales process, right?
Okay.
Because if it was market related, they probably would have already solved it. But it sounds like it's a sales process, infrastructure, management issue, and it'll point that out and say exactly where there's deficiency. I have a deeper one that's 40 questions. It goes much deeper, but that's a quick, easy way for someone to say, how am I stacking up against, you know, my peers, and where could I be potentially doing better, or what's the potential root cause of what this challenge is that for some reason I'm not able to solve.
Good. And
And
so,
just have a conversation. I'm happy to just chat, you
yeah.
know, and kind of, you know, give some insights.
Great. And so as I wrap this up, I'll definitely make sure that in the comments of this podcast on Harris Whitesell Consulting's event page on LinkedIn, we'll
Yeah.
definitely share that you've got this readiness assessment and it's short and sweet, and
Yep.
to connect with you via LinkedIn and to reach out with you. I think there's already a comment there for them to connect with you on LinkedIn. So that's good.
Great. Yeah.
And Michael, I truly appreciate this conversation. I know we went a little long, but it
Love it.
is a good one. And
Yeah.
sales are important right now to a lot of people and to a lot of businesses. And AI definitely is something very dynamic, very new, and
Yeah.
data-driven decisions around this data are really important right now. They matter.
They are.
And
Yeah.
and
And they're going
the
to matter more and more. You know, change before you have to, right?
yeah,
The
right.
market's going to dictate it.
Right.
So
And it's
maybe
a
get ahead of
tool.
that.
Don't
It's a tool.
catastrophize it. It's a tool. It is
Yeah.
really, it's a tool.
Yeah.
And learning the
tool.
tool and how to use the tool is where we become very artistic at it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I love it. This is a great conversation.
I know, and we could keep
An hour
going.
doesn't feel like enough.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
everyone out there, I just want to say thank you again for joining us, and share this with your friends, because it's like a coffee table book. It keeps going. It's available on LinkedIn and YouTube with Harris Whitesell Consulting. I'm Lori Harris. I am the host of Maximize Excellence podcast. And Michael, thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, everyone.
I love it. Anytime. Thanks for
having me. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maximize Excellence. Visit our events page on our website for details on upcoming podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel to listen to past episodes. And remember to ask yourself at the end of each day, did I do my best to maximize excellence today?